Hey, it's Rick here, and welcome back to Humaning, a podcast where we explore the imperfect art of being human. Today, we're doing a solo podcast. I'm doing a solo podcast. Thanks for listening. And the topic for today is why being human is your most important skill right now. I feel like we're recording this on April the 7th, and I feel like in the current environment that there's a couple of big elephants in the room right now that are impacting how we operate as humans. And this has kind of been percolating for me over the last 3 months, and I haven't really put out many podcasts or been too vocal around this in the first quarter of the year because I've just kind of been watching but also participating in what this looks like. And when I say this, I'm kind of just talking about the changing nature of our world, whether it's fuel pressure, financial instability, like disconnection through social media, the growing use of AI. So all of these things are in some way contributing to our and impacting on our humanness, our ability to connect, our ability to know ourselves, and our ability to therefore be with other people. And I've a little bit of a background. I've spent a fair bit of time at the start of this year working out what is it that I actually do in my work, whether that's in one-on-one or in group or whatever. And I've kind of become really clear on what humaning is for me. And for me, it's really the art of getting to know yourself. And with that, we have a lot of resistance and we have a lot of distraction right now that are competing for that process, competing for your time, attention, capacity to get to know yourself. And I guess this little solo podcast is just my attempt to name it, to name that we're in a situation where we're being pulled in lots of different directions right now, and none of them feel that great. And I get that. I'm very conscious of speaking for everyone, but this podcast is just around speaking to what I notice at the moment, both in my own world and in the worlds of my clients and partner and friends. And and I guess the preface for this podcast is just take what you will from it. As we go through some stuff that I want to talk about in regards to this, just notice what pops up for you. Notice which bits feel a bit spiky, whether there's a little bit of activation or a little trigger there, or which bits feel really alive or truthful for you. So just a little bit of awareness as we roll through the next little bit. This will be a shorter episode, so and I guess there's been some things that have contributed to this podcast of coming back to the solo and wanting to talk about humaning. And part of it has been for me personally to get back on social media and to confront a little fear I had of being seen and of getting my voice out there. So, this first quarter of the year has involved being consistent and proactive and putting myself out on video and all of the things that I do not love. Even doing this on video now is a stretch, and I don't love it, but I'm getting more comfortable with it. And part of that has been using AI as a tool in order to be more present not present, more visual, more seen on social media. So, I've kind of been both in the trenches, participating in this mess, I'll call it, this mess of distraction, this mess of moving away from ourselves, but also trying to watch it, like one foot out, trying to watch it at the same time. So this podcast is my attempt to to pull those apart and to speak separately from each one. And I'm going to use my example of being in it to then maybe speak to some of the bigger things at play, with the disconnection piece and how easy it is right now to move away from ourselves. Yeah, and I guess for me, putting more time and effort back into social media, there's been some really nice parts of it. There's been the overcoming the fear of being seen and realizing that it's okay to put myself out there. So that's been really nice. I've noticed the slightly addictive nature to it, and even I feel a little bit guilty saying slightly because it's fucking addictive, of changing the way I put things out in order for the algorithm to throw it out to more people and to reach more. And it feels a bit dirty. And then the funny thing is that for me personally, I really identify with AI really rapidly increasing. And just another preface, like I'm not sure of what your exposure to AI is or how much you do or don't use it or what you feel about it. But yeah, what became really clear at the start of this year that humaning, being human, getting to know yourself in order to connect and be able to connect with others is becoming less and less prevalent. It's becoming less of a skill. And I guess this is the topic of this solo podcast, is just to maybe pull at some of the threads that are causing that, not in a fear-mongering way or being overly dramatic, just in a way of like, this is what I notice. And from someone who spends most of their working life either attempting to or helping others be more human, I just want to speak to the elephant in the room, and that's what this podcast is the contrast between the forces that pull us away from connection that we have right now. And it is a genuine disruption. It's not just economical. There's so much stuff happening at the moment with uncertainty around careers and jobs and fuel prices. And I think the big underneath all this at the moment for a lot of people is uncertainty. And what I notice with this is when we have this feeling of uncertainty, we either want to do something to try and create certainty, to control something. So we reach to something for control, or we want to distract. And yeah, this is the pattern that I see in myself and I see in so many others, is like the control of what they can, whether it's their domestic life, their partner, their kids, so like maybe an overreach for control. That's popping up. But also just being disconnected. And what I mean by that is having these feelings of uncertainty and not knowing what's going on and not wanting to sit with them, which I fucking understand. And then a lot of the time, the easiest out is social media, YouTube, Netflix. Just let me be distracted by something, And I listened to a podcast. We went down to Yamba over the Easter holidays, and driving back, Finn was driving back on his L's, so I was, slightly white knuckling the Easter traffic with him, but no, he did really well. But we're listening to a podcast, and it was around the guy that put out the Social Dilemma movie around probably 10 years ago. It's a really good movie. I actually watched it with Finn, around the dangers of social media. He's brought out a new movie around the dangers of AI. And I get, it's in his best interest to promote this and, make everyone scared. But there was just some things in there that I noticed he was talking about from his social media time around the short form video and the automatic scroll and what they call the infinite scroll of just it continues on. And when it comes to being distracted, we're happily doom scrolling. When I say happily, I mean it ironically, because we're getting this short-term relief, but it's coming at a medium and long-term cost. Does that make sense? Yeah. So we're happily scrolling. We're happily, flicking through the videos, watching stuff that may be entertaining, it may be educational, it may be all the things, but in some capacity, it's also distracting us from what's actually going on, from all the fuckery. And I was listening to this yesterday, and I'm like, I'm fucking contributing to this because I'm making social media content that is hardly ever over 7 seconds because that's what works. A lot of it is B-roll. A lot of it is just a really not aggressive, but emotional hook that stops you from scrolling. So you actually, and the whole thing is designed, I've worked out that if I want to get any reach with my social media, I've got to play by these rules. And that's not true. I don't have to. I could do it something else, but I realize that I'm contributing in my own way to this distraction economy, And I guess this is part of the reason that I wanted to get on today. And maybe, is this a flag in the sand or a line in the sand or something where I'm just like, I want to call it out that we're being pulled in a lot of different directions. We're pulled to certainty, we're pulled to distraction, we're pulled away from what we feel. And now more than ever, being connected to ourselves matters. Yeah. Yeah, and it's really making me, I woke up today and I just really question how I want to show up on social media. Like, do I want to contribute to, the erosion of people's attention? Sounds dramatic. But if you were honest and you looked at your screen time and looked at, social media, and I haven't even spoken about AI yet, I'll get to that in a sec, but if you've looked at your social media screen time, I'm sure that most of us would be like, fuck, that's more than I want it to be, And what do we do about that? Well, I've got a couple of experiments to play with, but I want to be cautious of how do I fix it? Because I don't want this to be, really, this podcast is just about naming what's here. It's not about the fix, but it's more about the awareness. And can I share this with you so you can maybe think about what your version of this looks like? Yeah. And being able to do this long form and just take my time, and I don't really have any notes here, I'm just freestyling, feels like I'm stepping out of the 7-second scroll, auto video, infinite doom scroll thing. So maybe we're just doing this to relieve a little bit of my guilt. And maybe that's okay, maybe that's okay. I think the thing with social media was it was designed to connect us, be connected with your friends, like the original kind of, especially the Facebook stuff. Instagram evolved from there, and to share our lives and our photos and all of that stuff. But I think the reality is that it actually disconnects us because our attention and our little dopamine system is wrapped up in our social media world. And again, I'm really cautious of being too generic here. So I'm sure you have a version of that, and it might be a lot, and it might be not much. So I'm aware of that. But yeah, the reality is that the more we're on social media, the more disconnected we are from ourselves and our people that are around us. And fucking hands up, like I'm guilty of this. And I really don't like that part of me, especially due to the work that I do. Like, I literally spend most of my days attempting to connect to myself or help others connect. And yet, especially this year, being more on social media, I've noticed that I'm drifting in the other direction. And I don't love that. And I kind of just want to name it. It's like, I don't love the part of me that gets disconnected because I'm lost in social media, refreshing, checking, commenting, all the stuff, it's the pokies, yeah? It's the socially acceptable version of the pokies and how it meets our addictive brain, our dopamine system. And I don't want to turn this into a rant against social media because it's not, because it has some value. There's not many places you can get yourself out there for free and share what your message is. So there are some real benefits to this, but the bit that I'm interested in is the human cost. Yeah. Like, what's the human cost of spending so much time on social media? And I guess that's a question that we can all ask ourselves. And at the same time, I get that right now, this can be a soothing agent for most of us. Yeah. It can be really beneficial to just scroll for an hour and get out of our heads and not get lost in our anxieties, our uncertainty. I get that. Yeah. So I see the benefit of that. And I think that's got a tipping point where that turns into some shitty disconnection, some shitty patterns. Yeah, and I think the cost, once we we over-index too much in that, we lose, this humaning element. We lose our connection to self because we outsource how we feel to this little fucking phone. And at the risk of no, not at the risk. Sorry, I'll take that back. Like, I was gonna apologize for being a bit ranty, but you know what? I'm not going to, because I think this is fucking scary, and I think it's a slippery slope, and I even noticed myself sliding down the slippery slope. So I just want to name it, and just to be able to open up a conversation, to engage, to be human about this part that's taking us away from being human. Yeah. That's all I want today to be, is to pose some curiosity, some wonder, some questions, some engagement, to get back to being human again. And there doesn't need to be a fucking roadmap for that, Let's just start with the curiosity. So that's my little rant about social media. We all have different versions of that, and for me personally, I have a tendency to go all in for a while and then get so burnt out I pull back. So I'm aware of that pattern, and I'm trying to minimize the all-inness of that for me. So, and I'm sure that most of us have an ongoing relationship with how much or how little of that we want to have in our lives. But I guess the other thing I wanted to talk about was the really fucking quick growth of AI. And, this podcast is called Humaning, and it feels like AI is a bit of the Antichrist. And I laugh when I say that, but I also think it's a little bit true, because so much of our human experience is either already taken up by AI or is going to pass. And that can sound really dramatic. I get it. But AI is designed to make information gathering and use and application more efficient. It's designed to make us more efficient. Yeah. So we have more time to do more AI stuff. Yeah. So again, I think there's a benefit and a cost here. The benefit is we get to do things quicker. Like as someone who runs my own business and I don't have any staff, I don't have any support team other than Joe supporting me as a human. Learning how to use AI for different tools has been really beneficial to me. It means I can do more, but I'm also really conscious of where the ethical line is to that, And for me, it's the ethical line is making sure that I write my stuff, and I can tweak it and I can format it and do lots of things once it's done. But for me, I need to write my own words. That's my ethical line. But I notice that a lot of people don't have that ethical line. And more we are portraying a robot's version of what they think is right as our human experience. And you think about it online and social media, but I even think about it in the therapy space. It pains me to even say this out loud, but I think the more disconnected we get, so the more we got our heads in social media and the more disconnected from humans we get, the more it makes sense that we'll reach out or lean on AI to answer our questions, to solve our problems, because we don't have to deal with the fuckery of other humans to get it done. It's more efficient. Yeah. It's more financially, it's cheaper. Yeah. And yeah, I can see a world when if we keep sliding down this slope of becoming like the loneliness epidemic of disconnection while being surrounded by people, that more and more of our lives are going to be governed, or not governed, but guided by these little AI machines. And that scares the fuck out of me a little bit. I had the thought at the start of the year around, I've got 2 years of my master's to go, and the next 2 years are going to be really hard work to work and run the business and do the masters. And the question that I had was like, if in 2 years' time, when I finish this masters, am I even going to have a job to go into? Am I going to have a career or an industry to go into? And it was an interesting thought process, because part of me is like, there's for people to ask Claude or ChatGPT a question and get it answered immediately for no cost, compared to paying $150 for a session or whatever a therapy session costs. With the financial pressures of the world, I was like, oh, that's heading in a really bad direction, But then the other side of that is that the humanness of therapy, the ability for someone to really see you and understand you and support you, is priceless. And this is this coming back to being human again. And I've just put a therapy lens on it, but it's the same for everything. Being more reliant on AI also means that we could potentially need human contact more than ever, So I don't necessarily see AI as, the end of human race and human contact, even though maybe sometimes. But I think the silver lining for it could be that it drives us back to human connection. And I guess this is what this podcast is around. It's like being human matters more than ever, right? And I guess what I really just wanted to do in this podcast was to draw some attention to the fuckery of social media, to draw some attention to the potential fuckery of overusing AI, and to bring it back to our human experience, to get to know ourselves. Yeah. And to not give up on that, that very human quest of really getting to know ourselves, to find what matters most, and to be able to feel what's happening in your life, to feel what's happening emotionally, mentally, physically, and be able to navigate with that. And yeah, and I'm getting caught for words here because it feels bigger than the words that I can give it. But yeah, I think part of this, as a little experiment, a practical experiment to play with, is just, even after you finish this podcast, just watching what's going on when you get pulled to use or to scroll to get to social media, like what's going on. And the same thing for when you get pulled to get onto Chat or Claude or whatever AI system you use. What's happening in your world to want to go to that? So can we even just start with this, with the awareness of what's happening for me right now to want to scroll or to want to get an answer from Claude or have a conversation, whatever it is, you know. The thing I didn't mention around AI is that the scary part about it is it's making us not grapple. It's making us not think and sit with and have conscious thought around things, because we're just like, oh, I'll just ask Chat, I'll just ask Claude. And I think it's a really slippery slope. Again, if we overuse, we over-index on using these AI tools at the cost of our human critical thinking. Because one thing that came up in this podcast yesterday was like, AI is all about information efficiency. Yeah. So making the information access and application more efficient. What it isn't, it's not wisdom, right? AI is not wisdom yet. and wisdom is the experience of that information and how to use it in a wise manner. Yeah. So when it's applicable, and again, it comes back to humanness. It's like reading the room. It's being with someone. It's having the wisdom to articulate certain things at the right time. AI ain't going to do that for you. Yeah. So it's really important that we notice the patterns that we're potentially falling into with social media and AI, and come back to our humanness, even if it is a little fucking frustrating and a little bit cumbersome, and it's easier if we do it the other way, you know? Yeah, and I guess what it's essentially what I wanted to talk to was those two parts. But I think the other thing with this, the humanness, is that in this current circumstances, we don't create new patterns. We turn up the intensity of our old patterns. Yeah. So the things that we already have in play that are wired in some capacity, nothing's ever completely wired in, but our adaptions and our relational patterns, when there's more pressure, when there's more disconnection, when there's more uncertainty, those patterns show up more, you know, whether that's withdrawal, whether that's people pleasing, whether that's searching for control or perfectionism or whatever it is, right? The reality is that it's our old stuff will just get louder. Yeah. And this also rolls around to, what does it look like if we can understand that more? What does it look like if we can be with that in a new way because we have a really clear picture and accept why it's there? And this is one of the things that I realized at the start of the year when I was like, what the fuck do I do with people? And it was this big part around the pattern awareness and the pattern mapping and the value of that. And for me, the value of that is being able to catch yourself falling down a repeating pattern. When I say catch yourself, like being conscious of it, yeah. And if we can be conscious of it, we can make a slightly different choice at that juncture. And I've realized that this is really at the core of what I do in all my shit. The one-on-one groups here on the podcast. We are having discussions and dialogue around what our patterns are, and we're mapping them out. How do we benefit? What are the consequences? Where do they come from? What are the fears? What are the superpowers? And then from that information, we get to make a wiser choice on how we step into that next time. Wiser being the human version of it, yeah? So yeah, that pattern part has been really interesting this year because I did I wanted to consolidate what that looked like in my work. So I put some time in the start of the year and I put together a workshop called Reframe, which was new ways to work with old patterns. And we did that workshop with 12 people of a half-day workshop in, I think it was January. And it was fucking great. It's really a simple process. And we went through it and picked a pattern and worked on that pattern and got familiar with the navigator, mapped it out essentially, which is at the core of what I do. And the feedback since then from people has been really cool around what has that allowed them to do in regards to seeing the pattern earlier and then being able to work with it, and generally being kinder on themselves because they're not beating themselves up because that pattern's running unconsciously or on autopilot. Cool. So that's great. So that workshop was great. And then I'm like, okay, what am I going to do with this? Because I could just keep doing that workshop. But with studying third-year masters, I wasn't sure about capacity and time, and burnout was still an issue for me. Well, the fear of burnout is ticking away in the back there. So what I've done, I've put that entire process into an online audio program, and that's called the Pattern Map. And I'm not creating this podcast to sell this. This is just what I've been working on for the last 3 months, and it's nearly there. It's probably a week or two away. And it's 11 modules, about 10 minutes each, and we go through the process of mapping out all the patterns that you have, picking the one that's the most important, and then mapping that in detail. And what's at the end of that is a better understanding of how you tick and what you can potentially do with that moving forward. And why do I bring that up? Because in this current environment, our patterns are turned up, they're intensified. So therefore the knock-on, the cost is intensified as well. And this can leave us in a little bit of fuckery. It can leave us with anxiety. It can leave us with overwhelm. It can leave us with strained relationships. It can do a whole lot of shit that is not that fun to be in. Yeah. And to me, the understanding our patterns part of it is at the core of getting to know ourselves on a really practical level. And the knock on from that is that I get to do it differently. And to me, in our current environment, that sounds like there's something I can control here. In a world that feels really fucking uncertain, I can have control of my patterns and how I show up and what's my next action in this old circumstance. Yeah. So in a world full of uncertainty, I can have some certainty around how I show up with this. And this is what actually gets me really fucking excited about this work, is that the more the online disconnection, the AI, the pressures, all the things that happen out there, it feels like this is the perfect time to get to know ourselves really well. Do you know what I mean? Because of all the things that we can't control, what we can is how we understand ourselves. And that's why I think being human is the most important skill you can have right now. Yeah. So, I don't know. I think that's it. I think that's what I wanted to share today. And again, I didn't want this to be a doomsday podcast, but also just I'm sick of there's a fucking elephant in the room, and we're all pretending it's not there some of the time. So I just wanted to call out the current environment and be like, yeah, there's some forces at play that are impacting how disconnected we're getting to ourselves and others. And there's some things we can control in that, or we can't control in that, but what we can is how we show up in that, how we operate in that. And to me, that's what humaning is. So just pay attention over the next few days, week, and just see where you check out, how you reach for the phone, where you disconnect, where you ask AI instead of grappling with it yourself. Like, just pay attention to that shit. And I'm not saying that to make it bad or shame you. It's just can we pay attention of where this is at right now? Because that's our starting point. Yeah. And then we'll go from there. But yeah, I'd be super interested if you'd like to leave a comment, either in Spotify or on social media. Don't worry, I get the irony of that. And I'd love to know how you feel about all this, how about what your version of this looks and sounds like, and whether I'm just being completely fucking irrational and delusional, which is highly likely. But nevertheless, it's really good to be back on the podcast again. Thank you for taking the time to listen to this, and I'll see you again soon.